Good afternoon. My name is Jack Berryman. I'm the ACSM historian, and we're here today talking with Eddie Phillips as part of our ACSM's Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science video series. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
I know it's a little harried and hurried here at these conferences, and I thought that the most difficult conferences were the ones in my hometown. And so you may or may not agree with that.
I do agree with you.
So anyhow, welcome. Thank you so much. I wanted to start, if you could just sort of let us know where you're at now,
Sure.
Your academic department, and what you may teach, and students, and all that research and so forth, and also if you are currently involved with ACSM on a committee,
Sure.
book author, editorial board, that sort of thing.
Great.
Then we'll drop back a little bit in time.
Great. Okay, so at the current time, first of all, my practice is physical medicine and rehabilitation. So I'm affiliated with the Harvard Medical School Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation here in Boston, where I'm an assistant professor.
Okay.
My day job, or sort of my sort of current posting, is as Chief of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation Services at the Boston VA. So I take care of the vets and trying to use the VA as a vehicle to roll out things that we can talk about, such as lifestyle medicine for the rest of American medicine. Back around 2007, within Harvard Medical School, I founded the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine within my department. So I'm the founder and director of the Institute. And our premise is that the stuff that doctors and nurses, actually all health professionals, need to know now about healthy behaviors, we're not taught in school.
Yeah.
So we set out to create an educational institute to sort of backfill the knowledge gap.
Yeah, healing rather than prevention. Or
Well,
lifestyle.
we talk about...
Traditionally, you're taught how to
fix
cure.
broken things,
Yeah.
which is great, and we're
Yeah.
actually pretty good at that.
Yeah.
It's just that with all the non-communicable chronic diseases, what we need to know is how to counsel on exercise,
Absolutely.
for instance. Within ACSM, I'm chair of the education committee within exercises medicine, and that fits very tightly with my interest in the educational piece, that it's not sufficient, but it sure is necessary for doctors and all health professionals to be well-versed, both personally as well as clinically, in what are the physical activity guidelines and how do you meaningfully counsel someone to adopt and to sustain them. So those are...
That's a plate full already.
There's more, but we'll move. It'll come up as we go.
Okay.
And back in 2009, with Steve Jonas, I co-authored the American College of Sports Medicine's Exercises Medicine, a clinician's guide to exercise prescription.
Yes, that book I know very well. And how has been? What's the interest in that been? I mean, has it been accepted widely, or just our curriculum's too full already?
Oh, we're talking medical school curriculum?
Yeah.
So
And clinicians, practicing clinicians. I mean, is it something that they grabbed hold of and say, yeah, we need to do this?
So interesting, increasingly clinicians are grabbing a hold of it because the world has changed and is changing. So by 2018, when Medicare evolves to at least half of their payments value-based, where I'm going to get paid, or my colleagues are going to get paid based on perhaps patient behaviors, patient outcomes, their satisfaction. Now, all of a sudden, the metric is shifting so that getting our patients active, because we know exercise is the best medicine, is actually going to be the way that partially how we get paid. So one measure of this is that we've run courses through Harvard Medical School, CME level, continuing medical education, and we used to get 100 enthusiasts. Twice a year, we run one of them called Active Lives, transforming our patients and ourselves. We include the clinicians in there.
What you preach.
And we would get about 100 enthusiasts. We'd run courses twice a year. Now we're selling out 350, 450 seats, because people are coming to recognize that this is something that they're missing and that they need to have in order to practice effectively. Many doctors come to us and they say, for 30 years I've been saying, eat less, move more. And we say, well, this is a demotivational tool. Fold that away, open your hands, and say, how can we work together to get you to adopt and sustain a healthier lifestyle? So the world is shifting. They're coming out of the woodwork. And also, it fits with the burnout that we're seeing in practicing clinicians. It's not just doctors, but we'll say nurses and doctors.
Yeah.
And the fact that we focus on self-care and the idea that the exercise, the potion is just as good for you and I personally, so we can sustain ourselves, but that also gives us an advantage to now be a good role model for our patients. And one of the things that we talk about, which is interesting, is that where you may have always been somewhat fit, you're not even the best role model. It's the doctor who was out of shape. We squeezed it out of her in medical school and residency and early practice, and now she's adopting a healthier lifestyle. The patients notice, and that's actually more of a
motivation.
It's tremendous, and those folks will not shut up once they start getting active.
Could you then also, I did have a question too about the book. Is that something that you two authors approached ACSM about doing, or was it the other way around, or how did that?
So early
it's
on.
such a neat thing.
Yeah, so this is the classic story of when you go to a committee meeting, if you ask the right or wrong question, we put you in charge. So as early as June of 2007, I went to the first, I can't even call it a think tank there. I think there were about 5 or 6 of us in a Chicago hotel room with Bob Salas and Jim Whitehead, and we started speaking about exercise as medicine, which was Bob Salas's brainchild.
Sure.
And I had added the idea that we really need to look at tobacco as a model of a cultural shift that's gone on. And so we started speaking about, what would this now global health initiative look like? And indeed, we launched by November of that year at the press club. And as early as one of the first couple of meetings, I raised my hand and said, all right, when we're successful, in other words, people are going to come to this. Exercise is medicine. We're going to roll this out. Where's the guidebook? I never had this in medical school. I'm interested. How do we do it?
How do you do
so
it?
they turned to me and said,
Okay,
you do it.
You need to do it.
You do it. Steve Jonas has written, I think, 30 books, so he was a senior author. And I learned how to write a book from him.
Is he here too?
I don't believe he's here at this meeting.
No, I meant a colleague at Harvard? Or
No,
what
I'm
is
sorry.
his-
He's just retired from SUNY Stony Brook
Oh, okay.
in the preventive medicine world.
Had you guys known each other before that, or not?
A little bit. And I knew that he knew how to write a book, so we
well,
put that together.
That's a good combo.
Yeah,
Right there.
right, exactly.
Could you go back now and talk a little bit about where you grew up and your interests and going off to college and eventually med school and
Sure.
and all that?
I grew up on Long Island. The town is called Great Neck. If you're a Gatsby fan, this would be West Egg.
Yeah.
So the first town outside of the New York City limits, a beautiful area. And I always grew up being active, doing a lot of martial arts, which actually delayed me going to medical school for a couple of years until I had not quite had my fill, but had achieved a black belt in a very tough school. And when I went off to, well, even as early in college, I went to Yale as an undergraduate, I was very interested in self-care. I had taken off a year during college, and I was interested in, I was at that stage, about 20 years old, trying to decide what would I do with my life. I was interested in politics, I was interested in law, in health, and ended up going to Washington, D.C. And I volunteered and worked at the American College of Preventive Medicine. So this was 1979, 1980.
Wow, I was going to ask you what year. That was a formative year, I bet.
Well, it was formative for me, and I also would say it was perhaps a watershed year for medicine. And I'll tell you 2 events.
Okay.
One of them was with the American College of Preventive Medicine. We went to the American Public Health Association meeting, and in a crowded New York hotel room at their meeting, they announced that smallpox had been eradicated, which should give you chills because you realize that this is a scourge for centuries.
A killer for,
It changed the course of history, and now they said
it's gone.
It's gone. So maybe we're closing the door on the infectious diseases, and then that same year, the word wellness gets published.
Yeah.
So John Travers, amongst others, starts publishing the word wellness. And my job as a 20-year-old college student was to track the early corporate efforts towards health promotion.
Sure.
So these were the Johnson & Johnsons and
Yeah,
Bonnie
I remember
Bell
some of
were
those.
early on. So that whet my appetite for, I'm interested in health. After a year in Washington, I didn't want to be a lawyer. I certainly didn't want to be a politician.
Right.
So I went back with renewed interest to actually apply to medical school after that formative year
Yeah.
in Washington.
When did you graduate from Yale? 80?
So I graduated, I took off a year, so I graduated in 82.
82.
Then I did my 2 years of heavy-duty martial arts, and then I went off to State University of New York at Buffalo. And when I was there, I was thankfully introduced to rehabilitation medicine. And I learned that there was, in the world of medicine, doctors and everyone would know that there's specialties for just about everything.
Yeah.
If you're interested in eyes, we got kidneys, skin,
Whatever.
your head, your
Yeah.
hair, I was interested in the body and in our muscles.
whole body.
The whole body, and in our physicality. So I was thankfully introduced and exposed to a very strong department of physical medicine and rehab. And within that, I learned that you can use exercise to fix about just anything. We didn't care if you had lost a leg, had hit your head, had a spinal cord injury, a stroke, were out of shape, anything. Exercise was the way to get someone back to where they were. So with that, I headed off to my residency. This was down in New York, but now downstate at Columbia Presbyterian.
Okay.
So I graduated from there in '92.
There's a residency 3 years? Or?
It's one year of internship and then 3 years of,
Yeah.
of
Okay.
a PM&R, physical medicine and rehab residency.
And you said it was what, 92?
So I graduated in '92 from residency.
Had you, just let me interrupt
Please.
quickly, had you heard of ACSM
I hadn't.
yet?
I had not yet.
Okay.
I had not
Okay,
yet.
we'll get there then.
Yeah, and so I go to work for a few years at Beth Israel in New York. My wife was finishing a fellowship. She's a clinician. She's a psychiatrist. We had our first child and decided to move up to Boston. So that was now 1995, and I joined what was then a division. And one of the things that I'm very proud of was having helped to form a Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at Harvard Medical School,
Yeah.
which is now going on 20 years, since about 96, 97. And along the way, I just was sort of doing my thing. We had 3 small children by then. And in 2004, I was working in a lab with Roger Fielding. He's a prominent researcher in sarcopenia. And it was sort of the holy grail. As a clinician, I got to be the study physician. So I'd go in, I would examine the subjects, in this case, mostly older adults. And there was literally a brochure from one of my colleagues there, and it was for ACSM. It was in Indianapolis.
I'll be darned.
And I started thumbing through it, and I was quickly overwhelmed with, but on Tuesday at noon, there's 4 things I want to go to.
It hasn't changed.
Exactly. And on Wednesday there were only 3. It's going to be harder. Won't be as hard to decide.
Right.
So I basically just got on a plane to Indianapolis.
And what year was
So
that?
it was 2004.
Okay.
And I learned so I was a little lonely the first year. I really did not know anyone, but I learned a little bit, I was a little bit of a trick that I would go to the discussions that I was interested in. I would say my name, where I was from, and what I was interested in. And then people started coming up to me
Yeah.
in the rest of the conference saying, oh, I heard your question
Oh,
about
good.
behavior
That was a
and
good idea.
exercise. And basically I haven't turned back since.
That's
Getting
neat.
more and more involved, and it's been going on 12 years now.
Is there any one person or group or in the college that sort of took you under their wings, so to speak, or
So interestingly, one of the first significant liaisons that I had was with Margaret Moore, who runs a company called Well Coaches. So they train health coaches. They have an alliance with ACSM since before that time. And I met her, actually, she was a vendor in the exhibit hall.
Yeah.
And we started chatting, and as fate would have it, we had both of us flown halfway across the country, and it turns out we live about 3 miles from each other. And we flew the same puddle jumper back from Indianapolis to Boston, and we started working together and putting together educational programs online for doctors and using the phrase lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle is broader than just exercise.
Sure.
It includes nutrition and self-care.
Sleep and all that.
And she brings to the table the behavior change. What's the science in how you apply wellness or health coaching? So because of her in with ACSM, by the 2005 when I went back, I was sitting there with Jim Whitehead and meeting Dick Cotton and all of the sort of the higher ups.
Yeah.
So by 2006 or so, when the idea of exercise as medicine was coming along, then sort of that was my entree, and then met and continued to work with the folks in exercise as medicine, Bob Salas and Liz Troy and all of those folks. So that's my area of the college.
Yeah. Your wife being a psychiatrist, has she, how shall I say it, realized the power of exercise?
So interestingly, so she's a very strong personal adherent to it.
Yeah.
We learned, or I learned a lesson along the way, that to maintain a really strong relationship with your partner, create a date time with them every week, especially with having kids and two careers. So our date time revolves around exercise. So personally, she adheres, and we actually do triathlons together. I should preface or correct that to say she finishes first and waits for me, and then I have to wait for her to get her age group medal. But in her practice, she's added an exercise question when she does her review of systems, and she tells a beautiful story where she asks a patient, you know, everything about their mood and their sex life and their sleep and their relationship with their spouse and how much exercise do you do, and just goes through this. And the patient comes back several months later. She goes through the same questions because that's what you do. And the woman said, well, now I'm walking 3 miles a day. And she said, well, you didn't used to. Like, when did that start? And the patient says, when you asked me. And then the patient says, you know, and I don't think I need so much of that antidepressant anymore. I think I'm feeling a lot better.
Yeah, that's why I ask. I went to the gym every day at Washington and Seattle, and I would always run into a friend of mine who was on the faculty, as it was a psychiatrist.
Sure.
And he always liked to tell the story. He says, Jack, I'm not here for this. I'm here for this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I used that in my classes, and the kids caught on, you know, and you know, it's a new generation. You have to educate over and over and over again. And we just changed our curriculum totally in our medical school. And as you can imagine, there's giant fights over who gets what. And I'm just wondering if there's any medical school curriculum out there that you can talk about a little bit that may have incorporated more of this lifestyle.
So let me
in their curriculum.
So let me just
traditional.
Let me just step back a half a step to tell you another sort of branch that I've gone out on with a bunch of great colleagues. So through an introduction from Steve Blair, we were traveling to give a talk in Italy together, and we spent a long time talking. He gave me a wonderful oral history of physical activity research from his friend Jerry Morris up to
the whole way
up to his 600 or 700 articles. And along the way, I told him about my passion about getting this into medical school.
Yes.
So he said, we literally stopped, the plane lands, and he's a tour. He walks in, gets an internet signal, and said, you have to meet Jennifer Trilk. She's a PhD, exercise physiologist. This was back 2012. That's just been hired into a newly forming medical school, University of South Carolina School of Medicine, Greenville. And they were, of the first 7 faculty, they hire her as an exercise physiologist. And she basically helps create the curriculum, bakes in exercise. So whereas we can talk about at University of Washington or here at Harvard, can we add a chocolate chip on top? She bakes it in. You can't escape the flavor.
That's amazing.
So that became maybe one of the key lifestyle medical schools, and they just graduated their first class. So together, with a lot of help from other folks, including ACSM and Exercises Medicine and the national boards, and we founded the Lifestyle Medicine Education Collaborative. So we call that LMED or LMED. It's a collaborative. And the idea there is that we want to help U.S. medical schools to put this into their curriculum. Now, it's a little bit like behavior change. If the school is pre-contemplative, we'll say, just run a lunch group. And we do that at Harvard, and my colleagues have actually published on the lunch group that we run for the last 6 years. Maybe that's as far as you get. Other ones, you have an elective, like they have at Stanford. Lifestyle medicine elective. It's been going on for the last 4 years. You can get a credit, and what's actually exciting is that you don't have to be a medical student. Anyone on campus can learn lifestyle, and you're going to hear about exercise, or you can weave it into the curriculum. And what LMED does is it guides and mentors and assists people so if you have folks at University of Washington that are looking for some support, we can provide it.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I remember a guy in ACSM a long time ago, and his name was Paul Ribisil. And he had this idea of lifestyle medicine quite a long time ago, and I don't know what has happened to him, but I didn't know if you had ever heard of him. Or
I don't know him.
But he gave talks about it and so forth.
What's interesting, it's grown up very strongly in the last several years, and what's interesting is that it takes the tenets of preventive medicine, but it takes it a next step further because the evidence shows conclusively that it's not just about preventing heart disease. Adequate amounts of exercise, eating properly, stress and social support can reverse heart disease. It can help reverse diabetes. So we're taking it the next step. Of course, it could also prevent the second heart attack.
But in that case, it's a cure. In that sense,
we like the word reverse. We probably use the word reverse rather than cure for diabetes.
Well, cure is pretty powerful, but at least you're shifting the change is going the other way.
There's a great question that I learned from a colleague in Colorado, which is that if you have your patient's blood sugars are going up, and what he says to them is, we can attempt to manage this disease with medications and injections and finger sticks, et cetera, or we could work to reverse it through lifestyle change. What would you like to do? Now,
pretty clear.
Pretty clear. And if you want the drugs and you want the needles,
we can do that.
We can give you a pump. We can, or we could get you to the gym and maybe. Simple choice.
You might have fun too.
And you may sleep. I'm sorry. Before I prescribe this exercise to you, I need to give you some. I need to advise you of the side effects. It's going to improve your sex life and your sleep, and your relationships and your skin, and you get the idea.
Yeah. Do you need to think about this?
Right. If you do, I'll wait for you.
That's great. That's a good story. So I guess I have many questions for you because it's an area that I told you that I'm particularly interested in because Galen and Hippocrates had it right.
Correct.
A long time ago. What is there another book on the forefront, or what do you think is going to be the next thing that's going to help keep this moving?
So, to me, the Manhattan Project for the 21st century is to crack the code on human behavior. In other words, what is it that will allow us to make the healthier choice and be supported in it? And if you're looking for another book, I've written one with Margaret Moore.
Oh,
so it's coming out.
Done? It's not out yet.
It's coming out this September.
Oh, okay.
So it's Organize Your Emotions, Optimize Your Life, Decode Your Emotional DNA, and Thrive.
Okay.
And the premise of it, very briefly, is that we all have an ongoing dialogue in our brains, and there are competing elements, everything from your body regulator saying, I got to stand up now, my back is hurting, to a relational piece like, wow, why don't we just go for a walk together, your creativity, your self-confidence, et cetera. If you can harness all of those voices, so that's where I think medicine needs to go, and that's our next step to move the conversation along, is to get us to sort of analyze it's self-coaching, and the goal hopefully is to get people more active.
Was that book done in any association with ACSM, or is this a separate publisher?
So it's published through Harvard Health Publications,
good.
through Margaret Moore and myself.
Yeah.
William Morrow is the publisher.
Oh,
coming
fantastic.
out this year.
Okay. Probably be a bestseller.
We
You
hope.
hope?
We hope.
Well, anyhow, thank you so
Thank
much,
you so much,
Eddie.
Jack.
I appreciate meeting you.
My pleasure.
As I told you, I had that book right on my shelf.
Great.
And, showed a lot of people the book.
We'll get another one on your shelf for you.
Well, and I sent our dean one as well, but never heard back. And he's an active exerciser. He's a rower.
Oh, Washington's got a great.
Oh yeah, he's. But I never heard back. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but
We'll check in with him.
well, thank you again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.